We saw this really extraordinary moment where you have a senior Republican senator, Bob Corker, who heads the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, say things that we've heard from Republicans privately for quite some time, but saying them out loud. And what he's essentially saying here is that he has concerns about Donald Trump's presidency. He called the White House an adult daycare, which is quite an insult for a Republican senator to throw at his own president. And then more broadly, talked about fearing that Trump could lead us into World War III, talked about his concerns that the president doesn't really seem to understand the office, and notably did not answer a question about whether he thinks Trump is fit for office. So Corker says that the opinions that he aired publicly are shared by most other Republican members of the Senate. Now, it's a holiday here in Washington. There are a lot of Republicans who are out of town, so we're not getting a ton of people backing Corker up or disputing what he's saying. But he's right in the sense that you do hear this kind of talk from Republicans privately. The reality, though, for Republicans is that among their voters, particularly for Republicans in the House, Trump remains pretty popular. He is someone who has the broad support of his base, those loyal supporters that came out and backed him during the campaign. They have not been swayed by much of what's happened in Washington the last several months. So Republicans are in a bit of a bind. While a lot of them do say privately that they would be where Corker is and think that the president maybe is not fit for office, they need his supporters. So it's a real conundrum for them right now. The big thing to note here is that Corker is freed from re-election pressure. He doesn't need to appeal to the Trump base. He doesn't need them on his side anymore. But it is notable that he's throwing these bombs when he has about 15 months left in office. And he's a very influential figure. He can affect Trump's agenda in a whole bunch of different ways, in part because the Republican majority in the Senate is so slim. If Trump does throw the Iran deal to the Senate, Corker, you can bet, would be there as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee as an influential voice. He's already raised concerns about tax reform. So yes, he is more freed from the political pressures because he is not going to be running for re-election, but his influence on Trump's agenda will remain quite profound over the next several months.
Unafraid! And we're here to stay.
Trump really knows that for his base, if there's one policy issue that matters, it's immigration. And when he went out and tried to strike this deal on DACA, the Dreamers, with the Democratic leadership, he got a lot of pushback from people in his camp who say, you campaigned on a hardline immigration policy. This is what your voters expect from him. So now we've seen him start to revert back in that direction, to say that he won't act on the Dreamers unless he can get a border wall built, unless there can be tougher border security, unless the flow of young illegal immigrants from South and Central America can be slowed. It's unclear whether Trump laying out these principles does anything to affect the actual policy. We've seen certainly blowback from Democrats, and the principles that Trump laid out are opposed by at least some Republicans. But just as a matter of rallying the base, of saying, I haven't abandoned you, I haven't moved to the left on these issues, this was an important step for the president.